Bears have made a lot of changes this offseason, but which players are going to benefit the most from that change? We're going to talk a little bit about that with 3 Bears players that were the potential biggest winners this offseason. Again, that has to happen on the field. And then we're going to talk a little bit about which position the Bears still may need to address the most in or after training camp. We'll talk about that plus more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bears Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bears news and content.
What's going on, Bears fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related. I'm the host there, Hayes, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Chi Bears Central on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that said, let's go and get into this content for today, y'all. And we're going to start off with this article from Parker Hurley, who talks about the biggest winners of the Chicago Bears offseason. Let's see what Parker got here for the Chicago Bears. First, he has number, of course, listed as Caleb Williams. He says that nobody won more than Caleb Williams on the Chicago Bears. A few won more across the entire NFL. Williams went from his offensive coordinator being fired during the season and shifting the offensive lineman to what looks like a stable situation on paper. First, he got the best offensive coordinator that was available to be hired this offseason as his head coach. Ben Johnson's already made notable impacts on Williams, starting with his demeanor. Now, there's no question about it. Most people, most outlets, most analysts, most pundits are going to say that Caleb Williams is set to benefit the most from what the Chicago Bears did this offseason. A lot of this was done, of course, with Caleb Williams, the development of that in mind, and overall just wanting to take a step up in the offense. I talked a lot yesterday about the importance that the Chicago Bears have invested in their trenches heavily this offseason. One of the most investments that we've made in trenches on both sides of the football in quite a while. And since under Ryan Poles for sure, right? So now you look at bringing in an offensive line that, has veterans on it, from Drew Dalman to Joe Tooney to Jonah Jackson. These are veterans who you basically know what the baseline is going to be for their performance. Of course, health is a concern for some of these guys. You want to make sure they're going to stay healthy, but that was going to be concerned with any offensive lineman. There's not a single offensive lineman that doesn't get banged up during the season. Like they are, when you look at the impact that they're playing with every single day, night in and night out, with you got 250-pound men running into each other on the offensive line consistently. Like that's tough. There's going to be some injuries there. But the Bears have done that. Then when you look at as well, getting Ozzie Trapillo and the performance that he had in college and the fact that he just doesn't give up sacks regularly. Now we're going to have to see what that means as far as in the NFL level. But then you also got in the weapons. Luther Burden there that's going to be able to slot in as the slot receiver. You got Colston Loveland there to give you one of the best 2 tight end sets in the game of football, right? Like, and that thing is something you cannot overlook at all, right? When you have 2 solid tight ends in a 12-man personnel, what that does to help sustain drives is a huge thing. And that's why that is something as well that Caleb Williams is going to benefit from, is just having more stability there. And we haven't even gotten into the hiring of Ben Johnson, bringing in a guy who is such a dynamic offensive play caller and play designer that he's going to be able to draw up stuff that the Bears could have only imagined to be able to do last year under Shane Waldron and his straightforward schemes and systems and all that type of bullshit. So, now having the improvement on the offensive line and improvement of weapons, then the weapons that you had here last year should be used even better than what they were last year because you have better overall coaching staff and a better decision-making group. You should have a better run game as well because your offensive line upgrades. There's no doubt that Caleb Williams definitely benefited tremendously from what the Chicago Bears did last year or did this offseason, and I think that's going to be a huge part of this. Now, one of the players that I also need to mention here, and I know this is going to be a little triggering for Bears fans, and Parkley calls this out as well, is that DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift is going to benefit a lot from the improvement that the Bears have made all around. Much for the same reasons I just said that Caleb Williams is going to benefit, DeAndre Swift and the running back room overall is going to benefit from the upgrades in the trenches. They should benefit from that substantially. DeAndre Swift is a solid enough running back. Not a great running back, but a solid enough running back, right? But Ben Johnson understands that he can produce. DeAndre Swift can produce. Now, his yards per carry were the lowest, I think, in his career last year. It didn't leave a lot to be desired when it comes down to that, but you got to look at that offensive line and the part that played into it, right? But DeAndre Swift is going to have a huge opportunity to produce now here, as well as better creative play calling, as well as, producing better from passing, catching passes out the backfield as well. But that running game, the fact that you've added in here veterans on that interior offensive line, and that should actually get you better offensive line production overall, DeAndre Swift is set to really benefit from it. Now, how much he does in that is going to be huge. Now, I think it's telling that the Bears did try to get a new running back here. They tried to trade up for Travion Henderson. They tried to do those type of things. But the fact of the matter is that DeAndre Swift still is going to see a benefit. Now, I don't know what that means for his long-term here as the Bears running back one or anything like that. We'll see what that goes into next season. But as far as this season and what we know here on paper, that he's going to benefit tremendously from what we have here going on. And I think that that's a huge thing here as well. So DeAndre Swift named as well here by Parker Hurley. And then he also mentions Ozzie Trapillo. And saying that Ozzie Trapillo, he says this: it's unfortunate that Braxton Jones has been unable to play due to injury, but the valuable work that Trapillo has been able to see at left tackle this offseason is impossible to measure. Considering he spent his college career at right tackle, he needs every rep he can get this offseason, and he will now enter training camp with an idea of what he needs to do to win a starting job. I struggle with putting that a rookie benefits the most from changes because he's part of the change that we got here. But I do understand where Parker is coming from here and saying that the situation that Ozzie Trapillo was drafted in is a situation that's really made for him to really have a chance to step up, shine, and win a starting position. And that's not what every rookie gets, right? Every rookie doesn't have that opportunity, honestly. And so I think that I can understand that. I would have listed here Cole Kmet. I get it that the Bears drafted Colston Loveland, and the common thought is, all right, how much is this going to eat into what Cole Kmet could possibly do? But I think when you see what Shane Waldron and Thomas Brown did as far as just not having Cole Kmet in their schemes at times, there's no doubt that he's going to see a huge benefit just by the nature that Ben Johnson is going to try to put every weapon that he has out there. Now, his production may not be what it was in 2023. We'll see if he can get back to that. That was a career year for him. But I do think if we're basing this off where he was last year to this season, Cole Kmet has an opportunity here to step up so much for the Chicago Bears, and it just be utilized a lot better. Gets in situations that kind of fit his game a little bit more. I think that he's going to be a player that Ben Johnson loves in his scheme and the different ways that he can line him and Colston Loveland out. The 12-man personnel is going to be a really important one for the Chicago Bears as well. So I would have put Cole Kmet on this list because I think Cole Kmet is a guy that is really going to benefit from what's going on here with the Chicago Bears tremendously. I think he's going to benefit a lot, actually, when it comes down to it. And so these are all kind of, offensive guys. I think if you're looking at, Parker didn't name any defensive guys, but I think if you're looking at defensively, it's Montez Sweat. Montez Sweat and Jalen Johnson, for that matter. There are two players, and I guess Kyler Gordon too. Those are the three players defensively that I would say are going to benefit the most from the changes here. Montez Sweat has just better overall production on that defensive line with him, better overall depth, I think, as well than what we had last year. And if Daniel Hardy and Austin Booker really step up in years two as well, I think that's going to provide tremendous help for Montez Sweat. It's not be double teamed as much and be freed up a little bit more. And Dayo Dinyingbo, I've already talked about him, Shamar Turner, Grady Jarrett. I think that those are guys that are shaped up to be a lot better in this scheme. And then for Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon. Jalen, because he's not going to just be on one side of the field anymore. They're not just going to have him in zone. He's going to be able to do more man coverage things. And that's something that Jalen has actually talked about wanting to do. But because of the scheme and how, Matt Eberflus ran his defense, he didn't get to do a lot of that. So rather than Jalen Johnson shutting down one side of the field, he's going to have more opportunities to shut down players. And that's going to have to put defenses in a spot where they have to think a lot more. Then you have Kyler Gordon, who already showed himself to be one of the best slot receivers in the league. When you look at how Dennis Allen gets creative and how he uses his defensive backs, I think Kyler Gordon is going to benefit hugely from having Dennis Allen there. So those were the three players that I would pick on the defensive side of the ball. Parker didn't talk about defense. Maybe that comes in a different article. But those are the three players I think defensively are going to benefit the most from the changes the Bears have made this offseason as a whole, right? If you have better production up front from your front seven, that makes everything easier down the path line for this team. And so I think that Grady Jarrett, having Andrew Billings back healthy, Javon Dexter's taking another step, and then it comes down to that rotation between Dayo, Austin Booker, and Daniel Hardy. What do those three guys provide consistently for you on that edge? And if they can provide some consistency to where you can't just double team Montez Sweat every single down, Montez is going to benefit hugely from that. So those are the players that I would pick on offense and defense when it comes down to who has benefited the most from the Chicago Bears changes this offseason. But I want to hear from you guys. Who are the players offensively, defensively that you think have benefited the most from the changes that the Bears have made this offseason. Let me know that down below. All right, with that said, let's get into, I want to talk a little bit about Tyson Bagent and his comments around what Ben Johnson has brought to the Chicago Bears and why players have bought into what Ben Johnson is selling here. He says this: there's not any gray area. At least in the previous 2 years, you could tell that some people liked the staff and supported what was going on, and some people were not a fan. There's none of that this year. Everybody knows that we're getting coached well. That is a statement there, right? Like, we understand that Matt Eberflus was let go last year, right? In November, he was out. It is what it is there. And there's no doubt about it that Matt Eberflus sometimes had accountability issues for himself. And I think we saw the impact that had on the players in the locker room as the season went on, especially as the team faced some adversity. You clearly saw how he kind of lost that locker room. And a new coach coming in is always going to kind of have guys that, well, let me not say always. There are times where new head coaches don't get guys to buy in very early on, but it seems like Ben Johnson and this coaching staff have really endeared themselves to the players here. And when you have that, when you have everybody bought in and Tyson Bagent saying, we all know, everybody knows we're being coached well, that's something that you just can't deny. Like, you look at that and you're like, great. I'm glad that everybody understands that you now have a coaching staff that is going to coach you up, that they are going to get the best out of what they can in you, and that, you know, they are teaching you and working towards something that is a shared vision. That's what you want to have, is buy-in from everybody. And that's not always going to be universal. We'll see if it stays universal for the Bears, and that's great if it does. But I think that that's the thing that you can't really overlook here, especially for the Bears that are trying to build a culture and correct the culture that's been here through several coaching staffs of just kind of disappointment and things like that. Ben Johnson, it's right or wrong, has to come in here with this Bears organization, and he has to clear out a lot of the leftovers here, the leftover stank on this team from Nagy. From Matt Eberflus, right? He has to clear that out, and you have to get that out of here. And so, you know, we'll see if this actually is what we can do. But I think things are starting to show that, you know, the Bears are starting to change things. Like I said before, I will never call it a culture change for sure until we see the Bears winning consistently and everybody buying in. That's when I can say the culture has changed here. And that just comes with time. But it seems like we have established a change that has started here. And let's hope that that's going to continue here, because if it does, man, that is going to be a very big thing when it all comes down to this as well. But let's get off of that. Let's get into one of the last topics for today. There are two position groups that Bears fans seem to not be as confident on, whereas seems like the Bears coaching staff is more confident on. That's the running back room, and that's the edge rotation. It seems like, especially because Dennis Allen and his belief in Deo, as well as Austin Booker being called a potential breakout candidate and all those type of things, that there is a lot of confidence in what this team can do pass rush rise, right? I get it. It looks better, and it's going to always get you more confidence from your fan base when you have big names there. If the Bears were able to trade for Trey Hendrickson, fans would absolutely be looking at this and saying, oh my God, we're going to have one of the most amazing pass rushes in the game of football. But I think it has to be noted that it doesn't have to be that caliber for it to still be great. You have to have great balance. And it seems like, from what Dennis Allen has talked about, and you know, just the way that this team has moved, is that there's a lot of confidence in what they brought in here in Deo. There's a lot of confidence that Austin Booker is going to be able to step up. There's a lot of confidence that Daniel Hardy, Montez Sweat, that these guys are going to be able to step up. Now, that could be because of the better rotation and balance in your interior defensive line as well. Confidence that Javon Dexter is going to take a step up, or just overall confidence that schematically we're going to be able to force offenses to think more, which is going to put us in an advantageous situation to actually, you know, confuse some offenses, which is something I don't say that we did a lot last year, right? So all those things play a part into it, where I think this defensive coaching staff has a lot of confidence in the edge. Now, for Bears fans, they are going to go off the I'll believe it when I see it. And I can't blame you for that. Deo Odunze is a player that, if you look at the stat sheet, there are some things that definitely stand out as, hey, this kid could be good, but it's not the thing that you look at that you're like, oh, I feel completely safe in this as a fan. And that's fans that just look at stat sheets. I think if you go and watch some tape on Deo and things like that, that can solve some things for you. But it's all going to come down to watching this Bears team play. And I think the pass rush is going to have to be something that they prove that they can get out on it. They're already, believe me, there are already people that got their comments ready that in preseason game one, the Bears don't look like they're getting pressure on their quarterback. Oh my God, see, we should have. They're prepared for that. There's going to be gloom and doom fans. It is what it is. The sky is falling. Bears fans are real. They're legit. It is what it is there. But I think that the defense isn't always about the names. And I've said that before too. It's not always about the names. It's about the production. It's about how they fit as a system and in a scheme. And hopefully you trust the coaching staff to get the best out of those guys. And if you do, that's when you start feeling a little bit more calm about the situation and stuff. So we'll see how that works out for the Chicago Bears. We'll see how it works out for that defensive line and the edge rotation. But the other one is the running back room. There's no doubt that the Bears tried, right? And, they talk about Ashton Genty. They tried to trade up to secure Travion Henderson. All of that, it is what it is. The Bears were not able to get in a new running back in here. But like I said in the first segment, I do think that you're going to see a step up in the running game just by the nature that our offensive line is better. And I don't think we're going to have like a top 10 in the league rushing attack or anything like that. We'll see. I doubt it, right? But we're not going to have that. But that doesn't mean that we still can't have a potent running game. And I think that's what the Bears need to get to. That's what they want to have, is they want to be solid offensively at all levels in all things. And I get it. I would have loved to see the Bears go out and get a guy and a name that we can all say that we feel very confident in, things like that. They missed out on Nick Chubb. They missed out on J.K. Dobbins. So they don't even have those guys as fallback options anymore. If in training camp they look at this running back room and they're like, oh, well, we may not be where we want to be at. But I do think, not just because of Kyle Monangai, not just because DeAndre Swift should see an uptick with the better offensive line, not because I'm looking at this and saying Roschon Johnson, this is finally going to be his year, but I do think a combination of all those things, as well as balance, better coaching, better preparation, better play calling. All those things are going to play into where the running game, I think, is going to be much improved from last year. If we can just be top half of the league with how versatile we're going to be offensively and in the passing game, if all those things come together, I think that's perfectly fine. Then we can work on refinement of that. If we prove that we can have a top half of the league running game with DeAndre Swift and what we have here, then imagine if the Bears, with the same aggression level that they attack the trenches this offseason, they focus on the running back. Imagine that then. That's where I'm looking at this as a proof of concept. If this running game can look better with basically the parts staying the same outside of Kyle Monangai and the improvement on the offensive line, then imagine once the Bears are able to. And I think that's the thing to look at in this season, is to watch how this running attack evolves, because then that gives something that Ryan Post can focus on. If Kyle Monangai shows himself to be a running back that you say, hey, he can be the running back two here. He can be part of a dual threat running back game. Let's go out and get a running back one. Or God forbid, Kyle Monangai does turn out to be Isaiah Pacheco and ends up being the running back one, then okay, you're cooking because you got that with the seventh round pick. Same thing as with Isaiah. So I think that this is going to be a year where they're going to prove the concept of how good their rushing attack can be at a baseline. They're going to establish a baseline of their running attack. Then you're going to build off of that in next offseason, and that's where you can really get to cooking, and that's where we'll see the step up. Now, I know that's looking far down the line. We got to get through this season, but I do think that there is a sign of confidence from the coaching staff in this running group with the fact that they did let Nick Chubb, they did let J.K. Dobbins, they let those guys go to other teams without even really sitting down and talking to them, because I think that there's a level of confidence in what this team could be at a baseline. And there's probably also a look at it in, let's see what we trust this investment, then we can invest further in it this offseason, and then it could probably take us over the top in that running attack. But let's establish some other things first here. I know that, Bears fans want it all now. Not everything is fixed in one offseason. It's very difficult to do that. But I think when you look at the things that the Bears have fixed this offseason, they flipped a lot of shit, man. They flipped a lot when it comes down to it. Flipping the trenches on both sides of the ball, getting better overall production and depth in both those areas. Hell, we're talking about somebody who was the starter left tackle for us last year in Braxton Jones, probably being a depth piece this year. Or we're even talking about a rookie who came in and competed for the starting job that's going to end up being a depth piece for you this year, right? At that tackle position. I think, as well as bringing in Darren Rouchar. So I get it. I get the angst and the anxiety about it. I really do, because I think that we want this team to be good. Everybody is all rooting in the same thing. They want the Chicago Bears to win football games. Of course, there's some people that want the Bears to win football games with their guy or so they can be right about something, and that's just part of the fan base and fandom. But overall, I think that this team has just it's set a path, themselves on a path, and now we get to see them get an opportunity to see that through. And I think a lot of that is going to be internal and things like that. You're not going to flip everything out. But I think when you look at it, it's factors like Rome in year two. What does he look like as being a player that's been mentioned as a player that could have a breakout year with him adding to his body, things like that? That's huge there. Luther Burden, Olamide Zaccheaus, right? Those guys that are going to be putting a lot of pressure in that slot receiver position. That's better than what we've had, with better play calling from Ben Johnson as well. That's going to be a thing that steps up for this as well. How rapidly the Chicago Bears develop under Ben Johnson next season is going to be a really big point into how we now look at the future for this team, right? Because if this team looks like a way more competent team on both sides of the ball with Ben Johnson and Dennis Allen, that's just going to be a nice step in the right direction. Now, we want to win football games. Ben Johnson has said he wants to win football games this year, so let's see what that's going to be. Everybody, I think, with the Bears understands. Jalen Johnson has said it. They've had a lot of off seasons where they've won the off season. Now this is about winning on the football field. And let's hope that the Bears can get there this season. I think that we're on a good path to get there. Let's just wait to see when they prove it when the pads are on. But that's my time for today, guys. Make sure you guys are following us at Shy Bears Central. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. ChicagoBearsCentral@gmail.com. Lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-242-9336. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bears related, but that's thanks to you, lovely and beautiful people. And like I like to end every episode on, Chi-Town up, bear down. Love you guys. Peace, y'all.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.